Everybody doing all right? Good. Thank you for coming in here. Yeah. Thank you everyone for coming. So we've been having a series of town halls around lead. I want to thank you guys for coming and being a part of this conversation. When I first read the stories about lead poisoning in Syracuse, I was really taken aback, and it was one of the main things that motivated me to run for office. By the way, my name is Joe Driscoll. I'm the 5th District Councilor. We've been working on new legislation at the city level to look at how we address lead, looking at other municipalities who have tackled this problem and the ways they've dealt with it. So we've been looking at best practices. And in talking with our neighbors, particularly Rochester, who has had a lot of success in dealing with this problem, they said that breaking down the silos was the most important part. You know, that information stays in one side over here and over here and over here, and the groups never get together and discuss their information and have a sharing of information. And that, in cities that have had success with dealing with lead, they've said has been one of the greatest assets and one of the greatest creators of change, was breaking down the silos of information and coming together and sharing information and making sure everybody's on the same page with the set of facts and the same set of knowledge for how we address this problem. Because so much of how to attack this problem is education, outreach, conversation, communication. So thank you all for attending and being a part of that conversation and sharing information. So another important aspect of fighting lead is getting everybody on the same page, pulling the rope in the same direction. And we've had great momentum in the county and the city lately. All our partners have been at the table. We've had the mayor, the council, the district attorney. Everybody's been trying to tackle this in their own corner, and the county's really led the way, done a great job. So I'd like to introduce our county executive, Ryan McMahon, to say a few words. He's been a real champion on this. And please welcome Ryan McMahon.
Thank you, Joe, and welcome everyone back. This is our second town hall meeting this week on this important topic and this important public health issue that our community has been facing for a period of time. And a couple things. Each town hall we have, there's a different audience we're trying to address and trying to continue the dialogue. But certainly the partnerships that we have built over the last few years continue to grow. And I want to thank all of our partners, whether it's the city of Syracuse, throughout city government and all your teams and what you do in the neighborhoods. It's tremendous work. And the city is where the largest concentration of old housing stock is. So that's where the biggest problem is. We certainly have issues out in our villages and some of our towns as well. And so the partners with the city, the county, our health department, all of our community development departments working on this, our children and family protective, our social services. It's amazing what we can all do as a community when we work together for a common cause and a common goal, which is to eradicate lead that is exposed to our residents, but specifically our young children. So I want to thank you all for your work. Some of our other great nonprofit partners, the Community Foundation, Home Headquarters, 211 is here. 211 is an unbelievable resource, and soon you'll be able to call 211 and get your questions asked specifically on this. So this town hall is really about practitioners. We're focusing on staff agencies, law enforcement, first responders, and early childhood providers. So thank you all for being here and what you do day in and day out. Things are exciting when it comes to being able to address the issue. We've always talked about a carrot and stick approach. Right now, the carrot, the funding levels, we're very proud that last week our county application, moving forward, we received $5.6 million from the federal government to continue our program. Most of that funds will be going towards where the problem is the greatest. So just because it's a county grant, we will spend a lot of that money in the heart of our city to try to get to this. In addition to that, in 2018, we partnered with the city of Syracuse, and the city received a $4.1 million grant, and the Community Foundation put in $2 million, so you can do the math. There's a lot of money here now to address this issue and really help get windows taken out, getting new painting, new siding, new doors. more money than we've ever had before in the community. And as important with that, because of the work being done here, Secretary Carson came to Central New York. And we had a roundtable discussion on this, not just about money, because we asked him for money and they helped deliver. And I want to thank Congressman Katko's office for that, for bringing the secretary here. But we had a discussion about best practices. How can the program at the federal level be tailored in a way where it gets more effective for us? Not looking maybe at income as a basis for qualifying for grants, but maybe just looking at census tracts. If you own a property in a census tract, you qualify, period. So these are the discussions we continue to have and the dialogues we continue to have. So there's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of good work being done day to day. I'm very proud of all of our departments, and I'm very proud of all of you that really have stepped up on this issue. And again, thanks to Joe Driscoll for being our MC and for the work that Joe's done on this issue specifically. So thank you all.
Thank you, County Executive McMahon, and I want to just thank him again for his executive order there a short while back, making sure that county money would not go into units that were found to be lead hazardous, and that's going to be a huge tool for us to use when trying to combat lead. So thanks again to the county executive for all his work on that. So as I said, we've got so many great partners in the room, and it's been great working with this administration. The Walsh administration has made this a priority when Ben was running for office, and since they've come into office, every time we've come into an obstacle, they've been right there and been pushing this issue forward. So a champion for neighborhoods all over Syracuse, I'd like to introduce Deputy Mayor Sharon Owens.
Good afternoon. You all are the front line of this war, and it is a war against lead in the homes of our families in the city of Syracuse and throughout Onondaga County. For 30 years, I worked with families and saw the homes they lived in and how their children were growing and fighting this, and I'll call it what I call it, a demon, which is lead, and how it attacks the actual brain development of children. And it creates a disparity that we should not accept as a community. Today we got you saw in the paper some news about we're trending in the right way, in the right direction on poverty. And that's due to a lot of great work by a lot of collaboration and a lot of people. All of you are in this room and a lot of people who are not in this room. But just like the poverty trend, where we go at lead and be able to do all these initiatives and this influence and infusion of funds, it's still unacceptable to us as a community, because we know the housing, we know the lives that we want our children, women, and men to live in. So I thank you for continuing all of your hard work. You are our eyes and ears. You are the ones that tell us what we're doing well and what we're not doing well. And you are the ones that we have to respond to. You are the front line of this battle. And so on behalf of the mayor, I just want to thank you for your continued work. We're going to continue to work hard. I'm going to get out of your way so you can hear some great information from some amazing people. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And so, yeah, as Deputy Mayor Owens said, yes, let's hear from some amazing people. These are the three musketeers of housing and the people that are really on the front lines. You know, people like me get up and look at laws and analyze stuff from 1,000 feet away, but when you get right up into the weeds of dealing with this every day, these three people are really frontline defense, the ones that go first into battle. So with that, I'd like to introduce Katie Bronson with GHHI, Deb Lewis with the county, and Stephanie Pasquale with Neighborhood and Business Development. So I'll let them do the bulk of the heavy lifting with the information. Katie, if you want to take it from here.
Thanks, Joe. As Joe said, my name is Katie Bronson, and I am from Home Headquarters. And for the past 4 years, we have been working with a number of community partners with our Green and Healthy Homes Initiative for the Greater Syracuse area. Now that program is to improve the energy efficiency and health safety of our houses in the city of Syracuse. But throughout our work, we always came back to one of the main topics, which is lead in our community. So our stakeholder group decided to create our lead poisoning prevention action plan, which was finished in 2018. And this guiding document is a document that really identifies 4 main areas of where we really have to look at actions and strategies in order to decrease the hazards in our community and decrease the elevated blood lead levels in children in the city of Syracuse and Onondaga County. So today, we are going to be talking about a number of different issues, calling from policy to community development to empowerment and engagement, as well as our built environment and health and the medical field. And really what we're trying to do with all of these forums is to identify people's roles. We all have roles in addressing lead hazards in our community, and each one of us will have a different role in how we do it. At home headquarters with the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative for the Greater Syracuse area, as well as a number of other programs at home headquarters, we really look at home improvement projects, both for homeowners and for landlords, so they can improve the environment for their tenants. But we will be speaking with many other professionals that will also be showing what their role is. And that's one thing I will ask you guys all today is with your job, with your work, with you being home, what is your role here with lead poisoning prevention? So as I mentioned, there's going to be a number of policies and enforcement that we are going to be speaking about, and they all come from different levels of government. One area that we will be speaking about a lot is the Renovate, Right, and Repair program. That is a training to get people ready to do the work appropriately. But then we'll also be talking about the New York State Public Health Law, which is really what a lot of the programs at the Onondaga County Health Department. And then we also talk about codes in the city of Syracuse and what that means for lead poisoning prevention. But those are just some of the topics that we'll be speaking about, but they are very key, important parts because that's really where we take action and where we are able to take steps forward. Now, we have all of our policies and enforcement, but what we also have to do is create empowerment and do community outreach and engagement. So at the end of the spring, myself and some fellow colleagues with the Health Foundation for Western and Central New York through a fellowship program, we created a Lead Safe video. This Lead Safe video is here to empower residents, renters, homeowners on how to keep a lead safe environment. Again, that's not the full picture of lead poisoning prevention, but it's one piece. And this is actually a draft video. We were able to create it during the winter, so we did not get a lot of outdoor shots, but we will be improving it. And one of the reasons why we are showing it today is because I would also like to get some people's feedback, because we wanted to create a focus group and get some feedback of 1, what you'd like to see in there, 2, what other languages we can include, and 3, if there are areas of interest that you think need to be embellished or elaborated on. So if you wouldn't mind starting the video.
Today, we will be talking about how to stay safe from lead hazards in and around your home. Lead can be found in many places around your house, including paint, pipes, air, dirt, dust, food, dishes, and water. Lead can be harmful for all people, but is especially dangerous for children under the age of 6 and for pregnant women. Most homes built before 1978 have lead paint in them. When the paint peels, cracks, or is worn down, the chips and dust from the old lead paint can spread around your home.
When you and your children walk into the house, it's a good idea to take off your shoes at the door. If you have pets, be sure to clean their paws when they come in from outside. This may stop dirt, lead paint, dust, and other hazards from getting into your house. It also helps to use a doormat at every entrance to trap dirt and dust. Look at the inside and outside doors in your home. If you see any paint chips or dust, clean it with a wet wipe or a wet mop. Do not use a broom because that could cause the chips or dust to spread. Check the siding, porch, garage, trim, windows, and doors outside your home for peeling paint. Dirt can have lead in it, so make sure children play on the grass instead of in the dirt. If you have a vegetable garden, keep it away from the house, driveway, and drip line. Dirt could have old lead paint chips or dust, so it's best to create a raised bed garden using dirt bought from the store.
Eating healthy foods helps to protect against lead poisoning. Foods with iron, vitamin C, and calcium can help prevent lead poisoning and should be included with every meal. Eat in clean places that have a lower risk for lead exposure, for example, at a table instead of on the floor. Always wash your hands with soap and water before eating a meal or snacks. It's important to check your dishes too. Traditional pottery, fiestaware, and ceramicware may contain lead. Look for a label that says lead-free. Don't eat from dishes that are for decoration only. If you're not sure if a dish contains lead, don't use it. Lead can also be found in plumbing. Make a habit of letting the water run until it's very cold before using it. Only use cold water for cooking, drinking, and making baby formula. Boiling water will not remove the lead. Faucet or water pitcher filters can help, but make sure it is certified by NSF International by visiting nsf.org. You can test your water for lead. For more information, call EPA's Safe Drinking Water Hotline at 1-800-426-4791.
Make sure the rooms where children play and sleep don't have lead in them. Keep the crib and play areas away from walls, windows, and doors with chipping or peeling paint. Clean your windows every month. Use a wet wipe or cloth for cleaning dust or chipped paint. Do not use a broom because that could cause the chips or dust to spread. Paint chips may taste sweet and appeal to young children. Keep your children away from windowsills, especially if they are teething. Be sure children do not put their mouths on the windowsill. Some vinyl blinds may have lead in them, so keep children and their bed or crib away from the blinds.
Lead is sometimes found in children's toys and old furniture. If a toy is damaged, throw it away. If a toy has dust on it, clean it with a wet cloth. To find out if there are any lead recalls, sign up for the recall list at www.saferproducts.gov or call 1-800-638-2772.
Clean your home every week. Vacuum with a high-efficiency particulate air vacuum or HEPA vacuum. Use a wet mop to clean floors. Wet wipes work well to clean dust, and you can throw them away when you are done. Do not use a broom because it can cause paint chips or dust to spread. If you're planning any home improvement projects, ask your contractor for their lead safety for renovation, repair, and painting, or RRP certificate. If you are doing the work yourself, take the RRP training to help you understand how to keep your workspace safe during renovations and cleanup. During your home improvement project, be sure children and pregnant women stay away from the work area.
Wash your hands and your child's hands before and after eating, after playing, and after changing a diaper. Children under the age of 6 years old are at the highest risk for lead poisoning because they tend to put their hands and other items in their mouths. Lead can affect a child's growth, their behavior, and their ability to learn. At the age of 1 and 2, have your child's blood tested for lead by their healthcare provider. It is a law in New York State and is important because young children are at a greater risk for becoming lead poisoned.
Some jobs and hobbies may involve coming in contact with lead. This may include painters, artists, construction workers, and people who fish. Take off your work shoes before entering your home. Change any clothing that you think may have come in contact with lead. Be sure to wash your hands with soap and water before having contact with young children. Wash your work clothes separately from other clothes.
Exposure to lead can create many health problems that can last a long time. Be sure to test your children for lead at 1 and 2 years old. Use the wet cleaning method whenever you're cleaning your home. Keep your home safe from lead by following the tips shared in this video. If you have any questions, contact the Lead Poisoning Control Program at the Onondaga County Health Department at 315-435-3271 or visit www.ongov.net/health/lead.
Well, thank you very much for listening to that, and if you are interested in providing us some feedback and participating in the focus group, please come to the home headquarters table and just sign up. I'll be more than happy to get your information and we'll contact you to talk about the focus group. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Katie, appreciate it. Up next we have Deb Lewis, the Onondaga County Health Department.
Hi everybody, thanks for being here today. You know, the video covers a lot of ground and it talks about things that we all have in our control that can help us with making sure that the folks we're working with have the right information to keep their family safe in their home, no matter where it is they're living and the conditions that they find themselves in. So right now, I'd like to talk about the role of the health department and what we are responsible for doing. We are going to get into some very specific details about our care coordination activities at a later point in the presentation, and I think that will be informative to you as care providers as well. So a lot of people do not know that the health department reviews and receives test results for every single child in Onondaga County. We review those results on a daily basis, accept responsibility for them, and then take the required follow-up action based on what the child's test result is. Sometimes that test result doesn't require follow-up because it's below the threshold that requires a public health activity, and then other times it requires interaction with both our office and the child's primary care provider for some follow-up activities that might include additional testing, developmental evaluation and assessment, and referrals for services. Another responsibility of the health department is environmental risk assessment. We will do in-home lead risk assessment of properties associated with any child with an elevated test result. And that extends not only to the child's primary residence, but any other place where they spend a significant amount of time. That could be a daycare, a school, a family member's home where they're being cared for after or before school, and the like. Care coordination and environmental management are the core functions of our program, and we spend a lot of our time in those activities coordinating with other services in the community, including other county and city departments and private agencies. We may need to make referrals for developmental assessment, and we'll look to Help Me Grow in Onondaga County, the child's medical provider, and others to help with that. We may need to rely on early intervention services for more in-depth services and OT, PT, speech therapies, and that's a part of the responsibility of the health department in identifying children who are at increased risk for developmental delays based on exposure to lead. Sometimes families have needs to either relocate or they're having difficulties with their tenancy. We might make referrals to legal services and to other entities in the community depending on the specific needs of the family. In Onondaga County, we have seen the trend that's very similar to what we see at state and national level with the number of children with elevated test results falling over time. We still have more children in our community with elevated test results than we'd like, and so we still have a lot of work to do. There is no safe level of lead exposure. Any lead level can create lifelong health problems for a child, and the best strategy that we have available is prevention. The video gave a lot of information about primary prevention strategies that all of us can do and can share with our client base, and that is really the primary method of reducing and eliminating exposure to children in our community. So if you're looking at the maps here, we trend and track the activity in our community over time, and the areas of our city that are associated with a number of socioeconomic disadvantages, including a higher percentage of rental property, higher rates of poverty, more participants receiving services, also are the same areas in our city that are labeled with neighborhood revitalization strategy area criteria and are likely to be the same areas where we find increased numbers of children with elevated lead levels. What we see in the maps on this slide is that the map on the right is a little bit lighter in the shading, which for us is hopeful because what it means is that overall, the number of children that have the highest levels of lead in our community is going down. We still have areas of concern throughout the community, but the numbers of children with levels at the highest rates is declining. So what are we doing about it? You know, we can't do this alone. The whole purpose of this series of forums is to talk about the partnerships and collaborations that are working in our community and to find ways to make them work better. We have increased our partnerships and our communication with folks both inside of county government, inside of city government, and with our community agencies as well. We understand that lead is preventable, but we know that we all have to be working in the same direction for that to be a successful initiative. We do have a very strong lead initiative through the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative that Kate spoke about. The Lead Poisoning Prevention Action Plan is available online, and it has some really great strategies in it that we have been pursuing for the past couple of years, and we'll be revisiting soon to plan our activities for the coming years. Sharing information with our partners is another thing that we've been working on. You know, silos exist everywhere we are in local government, and breaking down silos between city and county has been essential at addressing lead in our community. Some of you may know that lead inspection information is reported to the city of Syracuse in their codes database. And for those of you who routinely look at that database to make placement decisions for families, you can see whether or not a lead inspection has been done, whether the case is open or closed. For those of you that don't know about that, we'd be happy to share some more about that with you at the tables after the forum. But this helps the city for planning their activities, informs code enforcement officers when they're going into a property if there's an open lead violation, and helps them to strengthen enforcement on both sides of city and county government to make sure that housing is safe for our families. New grant money in our community means that more houses are going to be addressed with that community resource. Unfortunately, this huge influx of money is focused only on housing. So the funding that comes in for other services continues to be pretty stable. What do we do about protecting our family? This little card is available on our table, and it repeats many of the tips that you saw in the video. They are all strategies that families can undertake themselves to keep their children safe in their home. We have them available at your request to provide you supplies of them for families that you're working with. Please just give us a call and tell us what you need. If there's something that you need in an alternate language, we do have a number of materials translated in other languages that we can make available to you. If you have a family that has risks in their home identified by the health department, or if they're planning to do renovation, or if they're planning to do some home remodeling and repair, make sure that they're using a certified contractor and not working in a way that is unsafe. One of the saddest things that we hear in our office is when a family buys a beautiful old home in one of our neighborhoods and they undertake that work themselves and start working on an older property without using the proper techniques. A renovation-related exposure is completely preventable by using very specific safety techniques and practices, keeping the work area clean and contained, cleaning up properly, and keeping children out of the area. If you're not going to do the work yourself, hire a certified contractor. We do have some ability to help families get the proper training they need and support their activities in making their home beautiful. So please feel free to call us and we'll get you pointed in the right direction. With that, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Pasquale from the city of Syracuse. Do I get the clicker? You get the clicker. Oh, geez, I didn't. Would you like us to click for you? No. I want the power. Give me the pen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today, and it's really exciting to see such interest and to continue this conversation with so many that are doing this frontline work in our community. So just tell you a little bit about the city of Syracuse and our housing inventory. So there's almost 69,000 housing units in the city of Syracuse, of which the vast majority are rental occupied. We do struggle with some vacant housing units in the city, which also contributes to some of the neighborhood revitalization needs that we have in our census tracts that have high rates of poverty and high rates of disinvestment. But what we do know is when Deb showed the chart of childhood lead levels and poisoning, that most of the children that are being affected aren't typically in larger buildings, but that the vast majority are in 1, 2, and 3 family rental units. And as you can see here, 97% of those in the city of Syracuse were built before 1980. So a lot of these older homes, while beautiful, they often create conditions for exposure that we're all trying to work hard to mitigate. So while there's a picture of Onondaga County, that little thing in the middle is the city of Syracuse. While only 20% of the children under 6 in all of the county reside in Syracuse, 87% with elevated blood lead levels are in our city. So we know this is a significant issue, as the county executive mentioned, where we have aging infrastructure. We have homes that are in need of repair. And some of them, the value sometimes isn't there to go just run out and get a loan to make those repairs. So the programs and some of the things you'll hear about today are critical to addressing those older homes. So this data just shows that we know where this problem is occurring for the most part. While there has been progress, and Deb's map showed that, and it's fantastic to see progress. We do know where in these areas of disinvestment, that is where the poisoning is occurring, and where that's also in line with where there's higher rates of poverty and higher rates of properties that have experienced considerable disinvestment. So what are we doing about all this? We actually, the three of us and many others, we work together well and often to develop this sort of comprehensive approach to addressing this issue. Over the years, it's been really great to figure out, well, the health department is following the humans around in the city of Syracuse. We often can have a little more teeth, if you will, on the structures and the properties. So having that constant communication and figuring out where those problem properties are located to make sure we're not reoccupying people in units that are unsafe. So we've worked really hard to develop this approach that emphasizes compliance, some proactive enforcement, and a lot of communication between tenants, landlords, and amongst ourselves regarding the different services and programs we can offer. So how do we do that? Proactive outreach. We have our code enforcement officers. We're trying to get them out there, not just reacting to complaints and not just reacting to concerns, but really being geographically assigned to smaller areas, sort of their piece of the earth, so that they can get to know community members, community groups, and the tenants, and sort of build those relationships so it's not scary to call code enforcement. We're also trying to be as open in our communication with landlords. We do need landlords in the city. We do need quality housing, and they are a partner, and they fall on every spectrum from awesome to not so great. And when someone calls in for a complaint, we do contact the landlord first and say, hey, did you even know there was no working toilet in your apartment? And try to bridge those relationships between the tenant and the landlord. And I think that is really important to do. Going forward, we've had a lot of compliance resulting just from that call versus just issuing the citation. We've improved a lot of our internal processes and automated some things that make things quicker. As Deb mentioned, we're trying to be as transparent as possible so that you know everything we know about a unit, whether it has open code violations, and whether or not there have been lead inspections in the property. We've also been working, we've held 70 kitchen table talks, and we're sitting down at people's kitchen table and really talking about code enforcement and housing issues and gathering information from the people that these issues affect the most. We share a ton of data together. I think that's important because we can't do everything, and we have prioritized sort of 10 census tracts in the city that we're trying to address the most in terms of housing quality and housing stability. A lot of our family members, as you all know better than most, it's a very mobile, when folks are living in poverty, it's a very mobile population, and we know what the impact of that is on families, not just around housing issues, but around school readiness and around family stability overall. And that mobility, often when you're moving, you don't move up in the quality spectrum, right? You're lucky if you stay the same, or sometimes if it's a crisis situation, you're moving to even a less quality unit. So that it's critical for us to prevent that from happening and to address issues as they come up. So we've been working with a lot of legal services partners and eviction prevention and other things as part of this whole family stability effort. As was mentioned, there has been new investments in this community we're so grateful that such a great partner is the Central New York Community Foundation, trying all kinds of creative things to address these issues in the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, and also through the awards that were mentioned earlier from HUD regarding lead hazard control. The applications are open. Keep them coming. Any tenants can actually alert us, call. They can't physically apply. The property owner has to sign the paper, but a tenant can certainly contact us if they'd like their home to be in one of the programs, and then we just try to do our best to outreach to the landlord and make that happen. There's been a ton of wonderful advocacy at the grassroots level through Uplift, the Lead Coalition, and through Tomorrow's Neighborhoods today, and we're just so grateful for that support and for lifting up this issue on a constant basis and holding us all accountable. It's incredibly important. We've also, I don't want to talk too much about how we've reorganized, but again, we're trying to have our code inspectors really know their piece of the earth and really get to know some of the neighbors and landlords in their area. When we come into a property, our focus is health and safety. We're not trying to ding a landlord on every single little tiny broken item. It really is to have clean, warm, safe units. So we try to make sure when we work with landlords that that's what we're getting at and that's what we understand. We do have some financial assistance in addition to the lead grant. We have some other resources, usually loans or other financial products available, but we really do try to work with people to get this work done. Some of you may know that 1 and 2 family properties in the city of Syracuse are required if they're rental to get a rental registry or a rental license. Just a year ago, it was passed that interior inspections are part of that process. So we're slowly getting through about 6,000 buildings to get those interior inspections done and make sure that landlords are prepared, knowledgeable about what the registry means and what their responsibilities are. In our office, sometimes we say we want to take the word enforcement out of code enforcement because it's code violation citing. We cite a lot of properties. We do thousands of violations a year, but without the ability to enforce it, it makes it very difficult. So I'm thrilled that we have the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication, or the BAA, and that's allowing us to we have the court process, which can only handle a certain volume, but now we have ticketing for code enforcement, which is huge, and it really is going to be a game changer in holding property owners accountable who do not comply with those violations. We have been working as a team with a bunch of stakeholders on priority properties, as I mentioned, to figure out those. We don't ever want to have a situation where Deb relocated someone out of a unit and then another family moves right in to the same affected property. So we work really hard on using whatever tools we have at our disposal to enforce on those properties. And we're in I'd say we're in the middle stages of the city of Syracuse is pursuing a lead ordinance, and spearheaded by Councilor Driscoll, to really look at New York State Building Code does not allow, our code enforcement officers cannot cite for a lead-based paint hazard. They can cite for chipping, peeling paint that they see with their eyeballs, but whether or not it has lead or if it's a lead hazard is currently not part of our toolkit. So adding that to our toolkit is going to be, I think, a really important tool for us moving forward. So there'll be a lot more coming from that, and we would love public support as that process unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thanks again, Katie and Deb as well. So right now we're going to hear from Saisha Bird. Saisha is a City of Syracuse homeowner who's going to share her story about lead issues that she experienced after purchasing a home here in the city in 2010. A Syracuse native, she has a BS from Keuka College, a master's in social work from Syracuse University, and Saisha spent 16 years working with youth through the Boys and Girls Club of Syracuse. Currently, she's working at Syracuse University, building relationships and engaging students from all over campus and encouraging them to get involved civically. Her goal is to bridge the gap between the Syracuse University community and the communities in the rest of the city of Syracuse. That's a goal dear to my heart as well. So we're going to show a quick video featuring Saisha.
After a routine health checkup for my children, we found out that the boys had lead in their blood. As a parent, I was afraid, I was scared, I was worried that I had done something wrong. Hi, my name is Saisha Bird, and I'm a TNT volunteer.
My name is Takara Smith, and I am the board delegate for Southside's TNT. TNT raises awareness about the dangers of lead paint.
It's important to inform all parents of the dangers because it could really affect a young child. It could mess with their motor skills and their learning development.
Children who are exposed to lead as a toddler can experience lifelong health problems ranging from behavioral concerns to difficulty with learning.
Children with lead poisoning have a tendency to act out in school. They have harder time concentrating and learning, and they don't know why.
That might not be identified as a toddler because you may not see those difficulties until the child is well into their school-aged years.
This is a big part of my work at TNT, just taking the time out to educate my community and those around me that how dangerous lead paint could be for our children. Because majority of the homes that were built on the north side are really older houses.
The south side of Syracuse is known for having historic homes, but unfortunately they're plagued with lead paint. So it's important that we encourage the community to be aware and lead safe so that they can identify these issues so they can be rectified.
And we're really thrilled that TNT is in the forefront of educating their neighbors and bringing people into the conversation.
TNT is here to help you make your community a better place.
Good afternoon. In 2010, I was frustrated with renting from landlords that struggled to keep up on their properties. I was ready to live the American dream. I wanted to purchase my own home. I fell in love with a beautiful house on the north side of Syracuse, built in 1850. The house has original oak wood floors, window trims, beveled decorative windows, and huge rooms. What was most impressive to me, and the reason I chose this house, was the backyard was huge and perfect for a place for my son to play. I knew the home needed work, but I was willing to do what it took to make it my own. After closing on the house, I remember receiving a pamphlet about lead from home headquarters. I sat down and I read it from front to back. I was sure this house, as old as it was, never had any major updates and most likely contained lead paint. I had already taken the first-time homeowner course at home headquarters, so I knew there was tons of grants out there that I could apply for to help me make my home safe for my child. I filled out an application for Peace Inc.'s Weatherization Assistance Program, applied for funding from Empire Housing, and called the Syracuse Lead Program to have the house tested for lead paint. A few weeks later, an inspector tested the house, and indeed, it tested positive for lead. The inspector found lead paint in the bathroom, the back hallway, around the windows, on the front porch. Because I was eligible for a grant from the Syracuse Lead Program, all of the windows were replaced. The other areas were painted with 3 coats of paint. The painted porch floor was covered with indoor-outdoor carpeting. The contractor used a HEPA vacuum to make sure any dust and paint chips were cleaned up. When the windows tested positive again, the construction crew came back and did one last cleanup, and the lead was gone, I thought. At the end of the summer, in 2013, I had my second son, and 18 months later, out pops another boy. So 3 boys. As a mom, I can attest that it's tough having babies in diapers, especially 2. Over the summer, we spent a lot of time on the enclosed front porch with their toys. It was a safe place for my boys to play, stay cool, and enjoy themselves, so I thought. At the end of the summer, I took the boys in for their scheduled wellness appointment. Their doctor was happy with their growth and cognitive development. He told me, "Whatever you're doing, Mom, you're doing a great job." About a week later, I received a phone call that shook my world. The nurse on the other end told me that the boys' lead test came back higher than they would like to see them, and asked me to bring the boys back in for another round of testing. After the second test, one of my boys still had a test result high enough to require additional testing. That afternoon, I sat and I racked my brain thinking, how could they have been exposed to lead when I'd done everything I could do to make sure my boys were protected? After a while, I remember how much time we had spent on the porch playing. I started looking up lead in floors, lead in carpet, and fell upon an answer. The carpet that the contractors installed on the porch was indoor-outdoor carpet with breathable fibers. During my research, I discovered the carpet had to be backed with rubber, so the paint particles and dust underneath couldn't find their way through the carpet. I immediately started calling around asking for help with replacing the carpet. I called all the agencies I worked with before figuring out who could help. When I finally reached home headquarters, I learned that they had a program called SHARP. I could apply for funding to replace the carpet. As an extra step, I also got rid of all the toys the boys played with on the porch. I continued to follow up with the boys' doctors to keep an eye on their test results. After a few months, the boys' levels were no longer high. I'm so glad I kept a routine with the doctors because they continued to test them and make sure that they were fine. Having the test done at the right time helped my boys immediately get the necessary care they needed and helped me find out where the lead was hiding. For months while my boys and I were going through this, I was angry, I was sad, I was scared. I already knew the effects of lead poisoning could have on a child. I saw it firsthand. I saw the effects when I was supervising a young lady that worked at the Boys and Girls Club for a summer youth program. She never sat still. She was always moving and talking. She had a big personality and was great at making people laugh. I always had to give her tasks that required her to move around all the time. One day while I was talking to her, I said, "Girl, do you have ants in your pants or something? Because you never ever stop moving." She looked at me and asked if we could go in the office and talk privately. When we were alone, she disclosed that as a child, she was exposed to lead paint and had very high levels. Her exposure to lead affected her in many ways. It was hard for her to concentrate on one thing at a time, and she had a lot of energy she had trouble controlling that kept her moving all the time. From that day forward, I promised myself that I would do whatever it took to educate others about the long-lasting effects of lead exposure and lead poisoning. I then started to educate parents at the Boys and Girls Club, Central Village, where I'd worked. I helped coordinate the Syracuse Housing, Boys and Girls Club Health and Wellness Fair and invited programs from the city, the county, and asked our local agencies to set up tables to talk to parents and share information. Right after I brought my home, I started going to my neighborhood TNT meetings. Later on, I started working more closely with TNT around neighborhood development issues, neighborhood safety, and how to deal with deteriorating homes. I continued to talk to my neighbors, to my TNT group, and with my friends and family about getting their children tested and how to protect children from lead in their home. There are so many things we can do to protect our children. Check your children's toys, make sure that they don't let your kids put it in their mouths or non-food items in their mouth. Pay close attention to those dollar store recalls on those toys, because my kids love to walk down the street and buy those toys. Be cautious about buying items, like I said, from the dollar store. Cover your outdoor painted floors with rubber back carpeting and pay attention to the paint. If it's chipping, paint it, call your landlord, the city, the county, and remember to get your children tested. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saisha, powerful advocate for neighborhoods all throughout Syracuse. Greatly appreciate it. So right now we're going to have our panel come up. Thanks again. One more time, we can give a round of applause for Stephanie Pasquale, Deb Lewis, Katie Bronson, and Saisha as well. Joining us now, Katie White, Program Manager with 211 CNY. Wendy Krylowitz, Director of Community Environmental Health, Onondaga County Department of Health. Naja Allman, Public Health Social Worker. And staying with us, the lead guru, Deb Lewis.
Thank
So thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for staying with us. So my first question is to Katie White with 211. Where do people get information for their family and how do they adequately access it?
Sure. So I'm the program manager of 211 CNY. 211 is a program of contact community services, and what it is an information and referral line. So we house a database of resources in 5 counties: Onondaga, Oswego, Jefferson, Lewis, and St. Lawrence. We have over 5,000 resources in those counties for health and human services. So what does health and human services really mean? That means everything. That means housing, utilities, food, mental health services, employment, education, transportation, all of the things that people might need. We are the connection, the clearinghouse of information for those resources. So all of the wonderful programs that you've heard about and you're going to hear about today, if you need that information again, if you forget, I heard someone say something about this, something about that, call 211, describe what you're looking for, and we're gonna make that connection for you. When it comes to lead-specific resources, we do have some categories that we place resources in. That includes lead information, lead abatement information, lead poisoning screening, and lead testing. We're in the process of working on creating a part of our website for what we're calling healthy housing. So different areas of concern that someone might have about their housing. Things like lead, things like asbestos, things like radon, anything like that. We're going to have information resources in one place online, hopefully very soon, so people can access that information in an easy one-stop place. We also work with Help Me Grow. Help Me Grow, Onondaga County, is support for parents on healthy early childhood development. What they do is they do their own assessments, they make their own referrals for child development related services. And they do advocacy for those people that call about their children from birth to 5 years old. And that is accessed through 211. So if you call 211 and ask to speak to Help Me Grow, we transfer over to that program. And we also connect people who call us for other things related to children. So people call us for things like a car seat or children's clothing or formula or diapers. And we offer Help Me Grow as another resource for them because people don't realize necessarily what it is that they should be looking for in terms of child development. And when we're talking about things like lead poisoning, some of the behavioral symptoms or developmental symptoms that might result. In terms of accessing our service, so 211 is available 24 hours, 7 days a week. And we're available in a few different kinds of ways. So by phone, if you dial 211 from any phone in our 5-county coverage area, you're going to get connected to our 211 center, 211 CNY, through Contact Community Services. The beauty of 211 is that it's a nationwide resource. So we cover 5 counties in New York State. Many other programs within the country cover other counties in our state, in different states. If you dial 211 from almost anywhere in the country, you're going to get connected to a 211 center that serves that area. We also have a toll-free number, so if you are calling about somebody but you're not in the area that you're looking for, if you're trying to get through to one of those 5 counties but you're not in them, call our toll-free number and you'll always get us. We have an email address that we access every day, so if you have inquiries that you'd like to send by email, that's an option. And then we have our website, which I'm going to show you a few screenshots of, just so that people are familiar with it and how to use it. And like I said, we're creating a healthy housing portion of our website, so that's something to stay tuned for. We're looking to make a few other updates to our website as well. And just recently, as in this past week, we have started doing live texting for 211. So 211 is now accessible by text. And in the same way that 211 is the same number you call across the country, this is the same number you text 211. So what you do is you text your zip code to 898-211, and a live operator can provide referrals via text. Since we're just starting out this program, we have some limited hours, but we're hoping to bring that out 24 hours as well. In the meantime, if you text while there's nobody available to text back, you're going to get a message saying if you need assistance, please call us. But we're hopeful that that will be another platform to reach people because we know making phone calls has kind of fallen out of favor. Texting has become a valued way to communicate, so we're trying to keep up with the ages. So just to look at our website, this is our homepage here. I just want to highlight the different ways to search because sometimes it's a little bit complicated and it really depends on what you're looking for. So there is your typical text box for searching. Just be aware it's not like a Google search, so don't ask things in the form of a question. Keywords is really the advised way to go. Our county coverage area, that is a clickable search feature, so you can actually choose right off by the county that you're looking for. We have a browse all topics, so this will really get into the fine details of categorization that 211 uses. So this will be every resource you would be able to search through. And then we have our popular topics icons, which makes it an easier way for people to access more of the common resources that people are looking for. So things like clothing, food, housing, utility assistance. A lot of our common types of calls are more easily available due to the popular icons. And then up top we have a link to Help Me Grow. So Help Me Grow has their own website attached to the 211 website. It has similar search features. And they also have a lot of information about early childhood development and assessment, things you can do online, in addition to calling them for support.
Thank you very much, Katie. So our next speaker is Wendy. A question for you. As we're dealing with people with practitioners today, how would someone know if there's lead in their client's home? What would it look like, and what are the warning signs that practitioners should be looking out for when they go to a client's house?
Okay, thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, everybody. We've talked about age of housing stock in the city of Syracuse, and you can assume that your house, if it is an older house built before 1978, does have the presence of lead paint. But the only definitive way to know is to have your home tested by calling the Onondaga County Health Department. The lead poison control program, you can see if your home is eligible for a free in-home lead paint-based inspection. If your home is eligible, we have EPA certified inspectors. They come out to your home. We have a really cool, sophisticated piece of equipment called an XRF. This machine is calibrated to determine the presence of lead. It reads through multiple layers of paint. So it's the whole history of that house can be read using this machine. We test surfaces that are chipping, peeling, chalking, deteriorating, crumbling. If lead hazards are found at a property, the property is cited for the presence of lead. A letter is sent to the owner with the risk of the hazards, and a letter is sent to the tenants with the same risk of hazards. So, how do we know what lead looks like? We get this question all the time. I used to be an inspector many moons ago, and lead does, for the most part, have a significant style to it when it breaks down. You can see in that lower part of the window, we call it a characteristic alligator back pattern of deterioration. It doesn't always look like that. That's the real frustrating part. When lead paint on homes, going through the years, it deteriorates. Our housing stock may have been painted initially in like the 1920s or earlier, so there's multiple layers of latex paint that could be over the original paint layer, and it won't break down like this. So, but it's interesting to note that if you look at that lower sash, when it starts to peel and deteriorate, a paint chip will fall and actually take all those layers with it. It'll expose dust, and in that paint chip will have that layer of paint that has lead in it. So the messaging has been consistent throughout this presentation. It was wonderful in that video. Saisha, I think she stole a lot of what I was going to say. These tip cards are available. Deborah made mention to it too. Lead poisoning is preventable. We have tips for the family. We have tips for your home. We also have a tip card that talks about, how to clean safely when you have lead paint or lead dust that's been noted as a hazard in your home, along with some gardening tips. These cards, as we mentioned before, are available. We take them with us on inspections, our care coordination. We refer to these as our, I'll call it our Bible. They're available out in the foyer. They have what we feel is the most important message that we talk about daily when we talk to clients and people her homes have been cited for lead, that this is preventable. And you have to know the information and how to protect yourself and your family. So please feel free to either contact us on the phone number there, or we do have a email address if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. So our next topic, Naja Alman is a social worker in Onondaga County. So if a child does have elevated blood levels, what are the next steps? What do we do when we find out?
Thanks, Joe. So anytime a child has an elevated blood test result, there is going to be required follow-up activities. On the slide here, it shows that those activities have been designated to certain entities, and this designation comes from the state. So the child's medical provider has the primary responsibility for the child's medical and developmental needs. They are required to do a developmental and nutritional assessment to check the child's growth, development, and their overall health. The assessments provide a baseline for ongoing monitoring of the child's growth and development that should be continuing. And based on those assessments, referrals may be made to other services such as WIC or early intervention. The medical provider is also responsible for that additional testing that we've mentioned several times already today. Any child that has an elevated test result would need to have another test to make sure that their lead level does not go up. The child's provider or the health department can discuss with the family when that repeat test should be done. A child with an elevated test result does not look any different than a child without an elevated test result. So there's usually no physical signs or symptoms when you look at a child that's going to make you think that they may have an elevated lead level. Like Saisha mentioned at the Well Child Check, everything looked great. Their development was great, and it wasn't until that test result came back that she found out and the doctor was aware that there was an elevated lead test result. So that's why it's so important for testing and then also for repeat testing, because that's the only way that you're going to know if a child's lead level is going up or if it's going down. It's really important to maintain those appointments, and as providers working with families, talking to them about what their doctor has recommended for repeat testing or when those appointments scheduled, and reminding them is a really great thing that you can do to help the family with that. If the child's test result does go up, there may be other services or evaluations that are needed. Now, the health department is required to ensure that the physician is completing their required activities, and we're doing that through communication and through coordination, talking with the doctor's offices. That's a big part of what I do every day. We will also do an in-home inspection, like we discussed, to identify the source of the exposure. The property owner and the occupant will be told during the inspection of the hazards that were found, and the occupants will be provided with specific information on what they need to do to remain safely in the home. In most cases, it is not necessary for the family to move. And I had a whole thing about that tip card that we've gone over a million times, so I'm not going to go into it, but they're out front. Please take that information, familiarize yourself with it. Can't stress enough how important it is to just be aware yourself, so that when you're talking with families, you can help reinforce the messages that the health department and the provider is already providing to them. So the impact of an elevated lead level will vary from child to child and may not be known for many years. Sometimes the impact of early lead exposure isn't known until the child starts school. That impact can mirror difficulties that every child could experience for a number of reasons, including trouble sitting still, trouble with learning and attention, and difficulty with controlling their behavior. For this reason, it's important to keep the child's health information on file in case it needs to be referred to later. And if you or the family does not have that health information, the parent or guardian can contact the health department to access that information. As a service provider working with the family, you can also contact us. If you were to call us just out of the blue without any consent, there's minimal information that we could share with you, but we do want to share information and work together and collaborate, as that's going to provide the best benefit for our families. So if you would like to request information about a property, you can go to the Onondaga County webpage and complete an online FOIL request. We also have the paper copy of that available at the table outside. If you would like to more specifically discuss a specific child or family, you can have the family fill out one of our release forms, also available outside and on the LEAD program website. That will give us permission to talk in more depth about that. And if you have any questions about how to get those forms or get to those areas on the web pages, please just call us and we'll be happy to explain. And as we've already mentioned, when an elevated test result is received, the doctor is required to complete that developmental and nutritional assessment. If you have concerns about the child's school performance, their learning, or their behavior, it may be helpful to ask for another assessment to be done to check on where the child is currently. That can be done through the child's provider or Help Me Grow, which we've already talked about, and the family can be referred to Help Me Grow to ask for that assistance directly rather than waiting for a referral from the doctor. The Federal IDEA Act specifically includes lead exposure as one of the health conditions eligible for school assessment and services. So if a child has a history of an elevated lead test result, you can talk to a teacher or a social worker to begin that process and have the child assessed through the school. And then if you have any other questions, call 211 or call our program directly and we can try to answer them as best we can.
Go ahead, yeah.
For county staff, if you are working in a Department of Children and Family Services or Department of Social Services, we have active and in place memorandum of understanding with each of those departments to share information about our shared client base. So if you're working within a county program and you want to know more about what's going on with a child that is in your care, please give us a call.
Thank you. Thanks, Naja and staff. And I just want to say, remember again, that after this is over, there's the resource tables outside that'll have a lot of this information as well. So next we hear from Deb Lewis. Deb, the next question is, what are the housing resources that are available in an emergency situation should a family decide they want to move and leave the property?
I want to start where Naja ended with, because there's been a lead inspection where there were findings of lead hazards, it doesn't mean that a person has to move. It really matters where the lead hazard is found. It matters whether it's accessible to the child, and it matters how the family is dealing with lead primary prevention in their home. And that's all very important, and it's taken into consideration as a part of our care coordination activities when we are assessing the needs of the family and their ability to remain safe in their home or their need to relocate. Obviously, in an emergency, if someone really cannot stay in their home because there are significant safety and health risks to the family in that dwelling, the first partner that we think about is Department of Economic Security, Department of Social Services Economic Security, to look at what they can do to help relocate the family. And they are our first call. We're always looking, before we get to that point, at what are the other resources that we have available to the family. Some families might be eligible for Section 8 voucher assistance. Now, this is something that we don't talk about widely in the community because it is a very exclusive process that is limited to priority populations. As service providers, you should understand that families who fall into one of several different priority populations may be eligible for a Section 8 housing choice voucher based on HUD's criteria. HUD has allowed local areas to decide what their priority populations are, and in Onondaga County, children with an elevated test result are one of those priority populations. However, the only way that Section 8 will accept that application is through the health department. And the reason that that happens is because we're the first folks that see the child's test result. We are contacting the family immediately, assessing their needs, inspecting the home, looking at the resources available and the needs of the family through our care coordination activities, and determining whether moving is something that the family can do with a Section 8 voucher in place. And so it's one of the many things that we look at when we're assessing the need for a family to move. If a family seems to be eligible for Section 8, NAJA is the first person that will call them and talk to them about that process and initiate the application with them. Now, of course, they have to meet Section 8 criteria and they have to qualify for the voucher under the normal HUD regulations, and that is outside of the health department's control. We have the benefit of being able to submit those applications and assist the family and advocate for them, but HUD has their own rules and regulations that we cannot override, regardless of how much we would like to help the family have that assistance. The other partner that we think about is the City of Syracuse. And the city has a relationship with Catholic Charities for relocation assistance. When our assessment is that the family really needs to move, and maybe it's because the owner hasn't been very timely in addressing the hazards we have found during our inspection. Maybe there are also code enforcement issues on the property. There are violations that have been identified and the owner is not moving on those either. If in our city-county property case management discussion, it seems like it's a good idea for us to help the family move as quickly as we can, the city will initiate their resources to provide a referral to Catholic Charities for relocation assistance. Again, that's something that is initiated by the health department through the City of Syracuse, and it's an active process as part of our care coordination activities. Sometimes families need to move and they're stuck in a lease, and then what do? We're looking at our legal partnerships to see if the child having an elevated test result and the owner not responding to the health department's request to remediate the hazards is a reason to request that the lease be broken. There are a number of legal strategies that can be put into place, and so we're frequently referring families to legal services, fair housing, volunteer lawyers projects, and all of our wonderful legal partners to make sure that if they're choosing to withhold rent, that they do it the right way. If they need to break their lease, they have the correct legal guidance to do so, and that they have someone in their corner that's going to advocate for them for their right to live in safe and healthy housing. Collaboration and communication is essential to everything that we provide, all of us provide to the families in our community. And sometimes, from the provider side of things, if you're not as familiar with what the health department does as someone else in the room, it can look like we're just a bunch of peaceful ducks kind of hanging out on the surface of a very calm lake and there's not a whole lot going on. Trust that there's a lot happening under the water and those little feet are paddling like crazy. There are always things happening behind the scenes, and the best recommendation I have for you is to call us and talk to us about the family that's in your care, and we will try to get you into, at least direct you in the right way and let you know what's already been happening and what's been initiated on our end.
Thanks, Deb. So before we open it up to questions from the audience, I want to throw in one question that comes from the audience. Fierce advocate Missy Ross brought this to my attention. Why does WIC no longer do lead testing?
So that's a really important question, and I'm glad to be able to have a chance to speak to it. And I think Saisha's story illustrates one important point in the care of our young children. Keeping well child visits, going to the doctor, and immediately having a response to your child's needs is critical in making sure that children receive what they need in a timely way. And while it has been a great benefit to Onondaga County to have WIC offering blood lead testing, it is not something that is required by WIC. The Onondaga County Health Department works under the direction of the New York State Department of Health, which requires us to make sure that kids are tested at age 1 and age 2, and to provide and ensure any other services are given to children based on their test results. Now, clinic-based testing activity in Onondaga County has declined steadily over the past several years, and we have also seen a corresponding increase in the number of tests that are provided and ordered by a child's primary care physician. And so that led to a decision to discontinue testing at WIC. We're supporting this trend because it's important that a child have an immediate response to their medical care needs. A delay in receiving needed services when a child has an elevated test result is a delay in them getting the services and support that they need for a successful life. WIC is required by their regulations to assess every child that comes into their clinic and to determine, does the child have a medical care provider, and is this child in need of a lead test? If they're finding that a child is in need of a lead test, they are automatically making a referral to the lead program. And then we are initiating our normal care coordination process to assess the family's needs, identify what the barrier is for the family to be tested, and to marshal the supports and services needed to make sure the child is tested in a timely way. We are there to provide this assistance. We are required to provide it under public health law, and we actively have provided it even when WIC testing was in place. So if you have a family that's experiencing a barrier to testing, they're having a hard time getting into their doctor's office, a clinic, a service where maybe they don't offer pediatric testing, call us. We will help you troubleshoot and make sure that the family is receiving the services that they need in a timely way.
Okay, thanks, Deb. So now we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Rich has canceled his week at the gym, so that, as you can imagine, if someone asks a question up front and then someone asks a question in the back, Rich gets a full day's workout, so.
It's going to be Monty Hall.
My question is for Deb. While it's great that the health department is helping with those barriers, there's a lot of families that aren't finding out that their kids have been poisoned by lead until they go to WIC, because WIC is more accessible to them. They have transportation to get there. They're bringing their kids in every 6 months. They're testing all the way up to age 5. If families don't know that their kids have been exposed, the only way to find out is by getting those tests. And if we don't know what families have those barriers, how are we getting those families tested?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. There are a few things that I'd like to clarify, though. Families that go to WIC are tested regularly for a couple of things. WIC is a nutrition program, and they're checking the child's iron to make sure that their nutrition needs are being met. And so families often get confused about what test is being administered during a WIC visit. Sometimes it has been a lead test, and most of the time it has also been an iron test. WIC does not test children, or never has tested children up until age 5 for lead. Testing has been done at clinic appointments when normal blood testing was required for the WIC certification process. Notification of the family is something that we're really concerned with. The family should be hearing from their primary care doctor what the results of any laboratory test is for their child. The health department actively tries to contact families who have a child with an elevated test result. And one of the things that we run into trying to give proper notification to family is, families move a lot. We may not have the right address. Phone numbers might be out of date. That's one of those things that we struggle with to make sure that families have the right information at the right time so that they can follow up in the right way. If you have thoughts on how we can do better about that, we would love to hear them from you. Finding out that your child has an elevated test result should never come from anybody except your child's primary care provider. That's something that we're actively working on, or the health department. We're actively working on that on a daily basis.
I just would like to elaborate a little bit, because there's a lot of families that don't have access to physicians for their children for many reasons. Some being that physicians aren't accepting Medicaid, some being transportation issues, some being they get the referral to get the testing, and they go to get tested, and there's long lines, and they don't have the time to wait. They have several other children with them. It's something we see a lot, especially in DSS. We have clients who tell us about all the barriers that they have. And I believe I saw statistics once that about 63% of the kids that are confirmed to have been poisoned by lead were found through WIC in Onondaga County. There's a lot of community organizations that have researched and stuff, so I just wanted to indicate that.
Thanks for that. I would love to spend some time talking with you afterwards. I think that if you have a family you're working with, any provider in here, or if there are family members in the room, if you're experiencing difficulty getting the right services for your child, you can't get to a lab, you don't have access to health care, please call us, and we will work with either yourself directly as a parent or the provider to make sure that you are connected to a primary medical care provider and have access to testing.
Any other questions? Audience? It's just cutting through.
So my concern, I did work with the homeless population for years. Usually people that, you did stated that 87% lead poisoning with children in Onondaga County. Now, these people are in crisis from what I've worked with and experienced. So why is not a law or policy that can have that landlord for once a year, their property be tested for lead before you even let that person in the house?
I guess that's one I could possibly field. That is an effort we're looking into as we're writing new legislation. Unfortunately, we're tremendously behind the curve in the city of Syracuse. As Deb and Stephanie mentioned earlier, chipping lead paint is a code violation, but the hazard of lead is not included in that. So I mean, you can't currently cite a landlord for any form of lead poisoning. So as we're looking at the new lead legislation that's coming forward, currently where we are, we've written the legislation. It's under environmental impact study, so it's being, we're looking at all the different facets of it. But as that goes along in the next few months, the city's going to be having public meetings to show everyone the legislation and to get feedback from people on what features should be included, but frequent testing and penalties for landlords who do not comply is a part of that legislation. But I agree. I think we're way behind on addressing this issue. But we, from the city council's perspective, are doing as much as we can to catch up. But I'm hesitant to comment authoritatively on what the legislation will be because it's still being worked out exactly how we're going to implement it, but public feedback is essential to making it effective.
I do have some comment about what's happening now while we're waiting for, a local ordinance to be put into play. Stephanie was sitting up here and you saw us kind of joking back and forth. We kind of travel in packs, the three of us, Katie, Stephanie, and I, and work on a lot of these problems together as a team because it is a very complicated thing. Some of the things that we've put into place have been incredibly, what sound like simple strategies to address a very complicated problem. One simple thing that we've put into place just within the last couple of months is that as a part of our review of inspection requests that are coming in, we're looking at what's the history of the property. Has the owner applied for the rental registry yet? Are there open code violations there? So when a lead inspector goes in there, they know that information when they go to the appointment. When the lead inspector comes back from that inspection, if there has been lead identified at the property, the feedback loop goes back to the city so that the city knows, hey, we just inspected a property that doesn't have a rental registry yet, and we found lead there. So what that does is it triggers the city to initiate the rental registry process. So we're both pushing on the landlord at the same time to make that unit safer. It's not exactly pre-occupancy inspection, which is what you're asking about, to make sure that homes are safe before people move in, but it's what we have right now that we can work with to try to improve housing for everyone.
Just had a quick question for anyone that can answer. I had a landlord that I worked with previously make it a condition for a family to live in the apartment to sign a release saying that they would not have the apartment tested for lead. Is that currently something that's legal for a landlord to require?
I can't imagine that's legal, but
No, a tenant has a right to request a health and safety inspection from code enforcement or the health department. As part of their tenant rights, it's a better question for CNY Fair Housing or our legal partners, but that is part of their tenant rights.
I'm no lawyer, but that doesn't sound right. Any other questions? Anyone? Anything else? All right, Rich doesn't get his full workout, I guess. I'll have to go back to the gym later on today. No, thank you everyone so much for coming out. We really appreciate it. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you very much for coming. Thank thanks to all of you. Please go out and check out the resource tables, pick up all the information and data, and don't hesitate to reach out to 211 and to the county if you have any further questions. Thank you for coming today.